All right, let's talk some more about Stoicism. Well, we're going through the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. We had landed in book 6, and I think this is a very short section, but it's a very interesting one, and one to talk about a little bit. Section 21. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Errare humanum est, perseverare diabolicum. To err is human, to persevere is diabolical, right? This is beautifully expressed, very concise, but this, in my mind, is a difficult thing to do. And people struggle with this. And I think it is a natural response when someone says, hey, you're doing this wrong, do it differently. To say, oh, you know what, you're absolutely right. I don't think that necessarily comes easy to people, because I think we feel attacked easily. I know I do. And it's something that I work on. And remember that the point of Stoicism is to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And you do that by making progress, right? Steps of progress that allow you to move towards where you want to be. And these don't have to be giant leaps. They typically are small steps, because that's how you start, right? It would be strange if you would go from one day to the next from being not your perfect self to being your perfect self, if there is such a thing. But you know what I mean, like a better and better version of yourself. It's impossible, I think. So then what do you do? Well, you do things in small steps. And I noticed progress in certain ways. I'll give you an example. I'll try to keep this short, but here's how publishing works in science. It's recently happened to me, so it might be a good illustration. You do your experiment, or whatever you do, in my case experiments, and then you write them up, you put them in a manuscript, and then you submit that manuscript to a scientific journal. And a scientific journal is it's like a magazine, right? A periodical that is published typically once a month, sometimes once every 2 months, etc. And the editor of that journal will take your manuscript and will first say yes or no. If he or she says, sure, we'll consider it, yes, then the editor sends that manuscript on to reviewers. And those reviewers are peers, they are people in your field of science, and they read your manuscript, and then they will say, this doesn't make sense, this conclusion is too strong, this analysis is inappropriate, this experiment is not conclusive, etc. So they will give you feedback. And the better they do their job, the harsher the feedback can be. And everybody always thinks, and this is why I want to talk about this, it's very difficult, because everybody always thinks, well, I've done a fantastic experiment, right? Because you spend time on it, you're invested in it, financially, emotionally, and just temporally. You've invested a lot of time in it. And then you get back your reviews, which can be destructive sometimes. They're meant to be constructive, but sometimes they're just not. Now, what happened to me recently is I had a manuscript we had sort of in a drawer for a while, and my old supervisor contacted me and said, shouldn't we publish this? I said, sure. So we sort of optimized it and we sent it to a journal. And I thought, this is I think it's a pretty good manuscript. And we got it back, and the reviewers all said, no, this is not enough participants, these conclusions are not strong enough. And a couple of years ago, I would have been kind of upset by that. Like, it feels often, you should understand, like a personal rejection. It's not a rejection of you, right? It's a rejection of your work, which is different. It's something we have to talk about a little bit. But now I thought, no, they were right. They were right. And the point of science is that it is a self-correcting endeavor, right? So the point here is that the reviewers did exactly what they were supposed to do. And this is where Marcus Aurelius comes in. If someone can prove me wrong, I was wrong, and show me my mistake in any thought or action, they did. They said, you did this, the power, statistically speaking, the power is too low, you don't have enough participants, this doesn't make sense. I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Really beautifully put, right? If you cannot accept what other people tell you is the truth, even though it may be true, well, then you will suffer. You're harming yourself in persevering in making your errors. Now, I also think that it's important to think about how exactly feedback is given. People don't always give feedback in the most kind or constructive manner. I see this a lot in YouTube. Your intro music sucks. This is the most horrid thing I ever heard. Why do you do this? You know, these kinds of things. You could also say, I don't get this intro music. Can you explain to me what this is? Right? Would be a different way to approach the same issue. So how you give someone feedback may make it easier or harder for them to understand it, even if you are completely right and they are completely wrong. But the way you present it can make a big difference. But people don't always understand that, especially these days. Social media have given everyone a platform, and everyone is of course entitled to their opinion, but everyone now also believes that it is their duty to provide their opinion. But it's not. The fact that you have an opinion does not mean you also have to vent that opinion. You can also not give that opinion. It is okay to reserve your opinion. And you maybe should ask yourself if giving your opinion will really help, will really make a change. You see, if you know that someone is unwilling or unable to change, well then what's really the point in giving feedback in the first place, because they're not going to change? Are you then not making things worse for yourself by trying to make them change, where in reality you cannot change other people? You can't. It's easy to say, oh, we can change everything in the world. No, you can't. You can't always change other people. You can change yourself. And part of that change could be thinking about how you deal with feedback. And Marcus Aurelius gives us a beautiful guideline here. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Yesterday, we obeyed kings and bowed our necks before emperors. But today we kneel only to truth. Khalil Gibran. I hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you next time for more talk about Stoicism.